Today it's the turn of the Akai S950 for a demonstration. This is a 30-year-old MIDI digital sampler. What's a MIDI digital sampler? Well, it's something that you can record a sound onto, and then you can play it back using a keyboard. So, you know, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, actually, he's got an EMU emulator, which is a very, very early sampler and hugely expensive. These samplers suddenly brought sampling within the reach of most people. £1,700 would buy you one of these in 1987. That's about £4,000 or £5,000 now. So it's still expensive, but doable. So we've got here a keyboard which has a MIDI output which is hooked up to the sampler. At the moment, the sampler is switched on, but I haven't loaded any sounds onto it yet. Now, they use these, the floppy disk drive, 3.5 inch, 1.44 megabytes. Wow. And you can still buy these. So that ensures that these will be around for years to come. At the moment, you are hearing a default sound that the sampler produces when you switch it on, and that is a sine wave. In fact, at the moment you're hearing it with reverb. And there it is. However, if you listen to that Clean Bandit tune, Symphony, it's a usable sound. We've got a sine wave through a reverb. Lovely, great. Now, I'm going to put this disc in. Now, this has a set of drum samples on it. So you put your disc in the front here, and then go to disc. And then we're going to find the clear memory and load disc. That's what we want to do. Clear memory and load disc. There we go. So now it's loading the sounds. For a full disc, to fully fill the memory of the sampler takes about 40 seconds. In the manual it says, while you're waiting, adjust the display contrast. So slightly different mentality with these instruments, in that you can't have everything instantly. Here is the manual for the S900, but it's very similar operation to the 950. So I now have that in memory. So now I have to play the keyboard, and I've got kick on C1, snare on D1, open hi-hat on F sharp, closed hi-hat on F sharp, open hi-hat on A sharp, and a crash cymbal on C sharp. Those are the only sounds that I've got on there at the moment. Now, I have used 79% of the memory of this already. So you're thinking, well, what can you do with it? And actually, you can do a lot with this. Something that's very different with the way this works to the way a digital workstation functions is that you can record samples at lots of different sample rates. So for a kick drum, for example, you don't need very much resolution in sampling rate terms. If you use a low sample rate, you save memory because there's fewer samples being stored onto it. So you have to get really creative with this. So a bass drum doesn't really need huge resolution, whereas the crash cymbal will need all you can get, and the hi-hat. The snare you can cut down a little bit as well. So I can now play a rhythm through the sampler. Etc. Now I'm going to show you how to record a sample. So I've got 79% of my memory used already. But I want to make a sort of, another sound up maybe that I can use with the keyboard. So on the front of the sampler there is a jack plug marked mic input and a jack plug marked line input. So I'm just going to stick my guitar in the front of the line input and just see what happens. This is the good thing, this is the exciting thing about using something like this, is that you don't know what is going to happen. So if I go to the record side now, name of sample to be recorded. So you have to make sure that you can enter the name of it. It's really important to name your files, and actually anyone who is old enough to remember using one of these is usually quite a lot better at the housekeeping when you're recording. It's very important to name your sound. So I'm going to put guitar, and I'm going to record just the open D string. There we go. Now I'm going to go to the next page that says name of program for monitoring, monitor. That's fine. That means I can listen to it once I've recorded. Audio source, analog input. Yeah, that's what I want. Audio bandwidth. Now this is where you have to get creative with your bandwidth, as I told you earlier about the cymbals. I'm going to record at 4000 Hertz. That's not hugely high. It's only just above the resolution of a telephone, but I want to be able to record this string for a fair while, and I'll show you why in a minute. So it's giving me a maximum recording time of 9,560 milliseconds, 9.5 seconds. I probably need 5 seconds, so I'm going to enter that in millisecond terms, 0.05000. There we go. Pitch of sound being recorded. It's very important to get this right. I'm going to say that this is called D1. There we go, because that's the note that I want. Start with any key, foot switch or audio level. I'm going to start with audio level. Now it sets, it shows you a little meter on the front. So I'm just going to do that. So, enter when ready. Okay, here we are. So it's recording now. Notice how I stopped the guitar string before I finish recording so that there's a natural fade on there. Otherwise it will be a sharp stop. You can program fades afterwards. So, I'm going to now go to Edit Sample. Now I need to select the sample that I want to edit. It doesn't automatically assume that you want to edit the sample you've just recorded. Guitar D5. So, okay, enter. Now, there's your sound. There's your guitar sound. It didn't sound a million miles away from what I recorded. Now, the tone and the general audio accuracy of this sampler can be sort of called into question a bit, but you're using a piece of kit to try and get a sound that actually you don't really know that you're going to get yet. I quite like that. Now you can play that sample back at any note. So I can now do something like putting it through a little sort of auto filter sort of effect. I'll put it through a bit of reverb as well. Notice that I am using these over here. I'm using an old Roland digital reverb, and I'm using this Zoom Studio because this is what you would have had. No effects would have been built into computers at all. So, I mean, you can go. That's kind of a passable clavinet sound. That's from one string of an electric guitar. Great, nice. So this is one way of using a sampler. To go into all of its MIDI, all of its menu functions is really beyond the scope of this demonstration, but you can see how you can use this actually in a really creative way and getting a different sound to your arsenal of musical instruments. So a sampler can record anything. You can record ambience outside a bird tweeting and put it onto your sampler. There are editing functions available where you can specify the start of the sample and the end of the sample where you want it to end. And because of the memory limitations of the sampler, it also allows you to clear the memory before the sample starts and after the sample finishes, freeing that memory up for other things. So it's a hugely powerful bit of kit, and as you can hear with those drum sounds, it did sound quite crunchy. You can get sound libraries for this still. There will be floppy disk boxes up and down the land with S950 sounds on them, and I'm sure you can download sounds from the internet quite easily for this. So there it is, the Akai S950 sampler. Fantastic bit of kit. there are two things in digital recording. There is the sampling rate, which is how often the recorder will take a sample, and then you have the bit depth, which is the number of different volume levels that it can record. So it's recording along the time and it's recording the volume. So the Akai S950 records in 12-bit. Now CD quality is 16-bit. We're now recording 32-bit, which is huge. It's a little bit over the top actually when you consider that people are listening to things on headphones that cost £1. So the reason the S950 sounds crunchy, as it were, is because of that 12-bit sampling, and that's the appeal of it.